Hello and welcome to my NDNT marriage channel. I wanted to talk about the 7 signs of a good relationship. Number 1, you and your partner can resolve conflicts. I would have to say that this is our number 1 conflict. Our inability to resolve any conflict that came up or arose. I remember raising subjects in the early days, and they'd end up in this kind of round and round sort of higgledy-piggledy. It's someplace I would never have expected them to go. And in the end, he'd be angry or in a huff or shutting down. And that was that. And there was no outcome or ending. There was no resolution. If I tried to raise it later, we got the same result. It was, I suppose, similar for him in that things that he raised with me didn't get resolved either. And in my defense, it was because the things that he was raising with me were me not following his recommendations, aka dictations, as in dictator, not dictations you take as a secretary, but he had this kind of dictatorship thing that he thought was how relationships worked, and when I didn't do what he wanted, he saw that as me and him not resolving conflicts. And then, of course, when he's trying to dictate something to me, something that I have to do his way, and then I'm standing up for myself, then for me that feels like a conflict that I can't resolve. So, yeah, that's always been our biggest struggle. It was the same with the children. We couldn't agree on parenting. It was the same as moving houses, colours, garden. I mean, I actually am surprised during this relationship how many conflicts we had and how little we resolved. And people talk about don't bring up the past. I have to admit that's probably my biggest flaw within the marriage. Because so many things weren't resolved, I kept re-raising them. And sometimes it'd be a few years later and I'd still be talking about that thing that we hadn't resolved. And he's kind of looking at me like, what are you doing? That was ages ago. Aren't we over it yet? And I'd feel really annoyed because we hadn't actually ever agreed on a resolution. We'd had some dodgy conversation that led to a dodgy argument, and then it was just swept under the carpet. And that was it. And that was it for a lot of things that we went through. I mean, even now we've got a new puppy and we're kind of conflicting over how to train the puppy. So, yeah, it's raised a new conflict getting this new puppy. Not in an extreme way, we're certainly handling it better this time round than previous conflicts. But it's still something that it's kind of like nobody ever says, yeah, okay, I agree. And I'm doing a lot of biting my tongue just to sort of not have the conflicts, or watching YouTube videos and showing them to him with this other dog trainer who knows what they're talking about, so that he can see that, you know, I'm not just randomly making wishy-washy statements. So yeah, that I would say has been our biggest problem, issue within the relationship, not being able to resolve conflicts. Number 2, you know how to compromise. Well, considering we're not very good at resolving conflicts, compromising certainly is another issue that we've had. In saying that, though, we are getting better. I feel like ever since we had the car issue, and just to reiterate for those who haven't watched my previous videos, where I brought a second-hand car and then he brought a brand new car that was more than double the price of my second-hand car. And he was so cross with me getting this car that I got. And then when he got his car that was bigger and better and more expensive, I felt that was really hypocritical. And so after that we sort of started to make a deal where if he brought something of X value, then I was allowed to buy something of X value. That being said, that's not really how things are working, because I don't like shopping or spending or having lots of stuff. So he's going out and buying things of big value. And the puppy, for example, that's over $1,000. And granted, that's a family thing, we can all share the dog, there's no problem there, but there's nothing I want that's $1,000, you know, so it's not like I can go out and match that spendage. However, we are getting better at least compromising. He is, for example, listening to the YouTube videos that I'm showing him of how to train a puppy, and that's at least a good step, because I'm not sure if that would have worked in earlier years. Compromising's always been a tricky one, because you have to do it in such a way that the other person doesn't feel like they're losing out. And I will say at this point in time that neurotypical marriages will have the same issues here. This is not a neurotypical, neurodiverse only situation. This is for anybody in a relationship, a marriage, or a friendship even, any kind of relationship. These are 7 key things that you should have or be able to do together. Number 3, you have unconditional love for each other. That's a really interesting one. Considering in the early days I didn't think that he loved me, like it was just so hard to tell. Unconditional love, it didn't feel like I had that from him. It felt like unless I did everything his way, he was going to be combative and find reasons not to love me. And in saying that, I feel like had I given in at every turn and just done everything his way, I don't think he would have loved me more or shown any extra love than the lack of love he was already showing, if that makes sense. I think that me being a complete and utter doormat would have made things 100% worse. He just would have been more demanding and more demanding. And then if we flip the coin and talk about it from my side, I would definitely not have loved him unconditionally had I just been a doormat and having to do everything his way just to keep him happy. No chance. So where we are now with our relationship, it's kind of a friendship love and not a in love love. So I guess in some senses our love isn't unconditional. From my perspective, I would definitely have loved him more had he been really sweet and lovely and nice throughout the relationship. And since he wasn't, and we had so many battles and we couldn't compromise or resolve conflicts, the love waned. So in a sense, it's not that unconditional. But at the same time, we're still together and accepting each other, even though we've had all these struggles. So it kind of is unconditional. What do you think? Let me know. Comment below. Number 4, you can trust one another. This is probably one thing that we do have that is good within the relationship. I do trust that he won't cheat on me. He's not a cheater. I'm not a cheater. Neither of us are cheaters. We're pretty honest with each other. And he is an honest person. He doesn't do things behind my back. He doesn't sort of lie about something or do something and not tell me, and then I find out later and, you know, the crap hits the fan. We don't have that. We have trust in that way. But trust in that he would hold my emotional well-being in regard, we definitely didn't have that trust. I was always waiting for the next time he blew up in my face and said something yucky and just kind of cut me emotionally. Even now it's kind of a thing where he hasn't done it for a while, but there's still, I guess, that fear. So there's sort of trust in certain areas. I mean, another way that we trust each other is that we know that neither of us is going to be physically abusive to each other. I know that if I left him, he's not going to try to revenge me and kill the children, for example. I mean, that does happen. Probably a small amount of people only, but still it does happen. There are partners who split up and the other partners be really awful and hard to deal with. In saying that, I don't know if we would have an amicable split if we split. It's one of the reasons that I've stayed, as a matter of fact, because I was worried about how unamicable he would be, or how sort of rule breaky he'd be with the children, and sort of not really use them against me, but when we have split up in the past, he's kind of heavily spoiled them, and then I get them back after, you know, a weekend with him, and they're a bit kind of monstery and hard to deal with because Dad lets me do this and Dad lets me do that, you know. So, I mean, that's us not compromising. Yeah, so I can trust that he wouldn't hurt us physically, but not necessarily trust that his emotions aren't going to get in the way and cause him to do things that are not necessarily good. But a lot of people struggle with that. We all struggle with trying to control our emotions and be good people in the heat of those emotions. So I can trust him to be financially good, and he can trust me in that sense. Neither of us are going out and spending all of our income or turning into gamblers or, I don't know, spending all our money on alcohol or drugs or anything like this. So we do have that trust. So there's sort of, I guess, areas where maybe some trust is lacking. And I suppose the key area is the emotional well-being. And I think that that's because he doesn't really understand emotional well-being. And therefore it's easier for him to break that trust. Number 5, you are kind to each other. Yeah. I would say that I'm more kind to him than he is to me. But I'm of course fully biased. He may not feel that way, even though I think that I'm that way. Put it this way, I haven't said and done the things that he has said and done. Like, I would never say to him, can you tell me where the rocks go in the front garden, and then lose my temper at him because he says he can't tell me yet, he's just going to play it by ear. Whereas that is something that he's done. So, there's a fly in the house. It's flying around me. I don't know if you can see it, and I'm sorry if you can, but welcome to Australia, where we do the Aussie salute. Anyway, yeah, I feel that he hasn't been kind. I think that it's one of our biggest sort of regrets. It's certainly something that he regrets. He has said to me that he wishes that he could go back in time and be better and do better, because he knows that he wasn't very kind. Even something the other day, he said some random remark, and I kind of went, oh, ouch, and made a joke of it, but it wasn't super offensive or anything, but it was, you know, a remark. And I suppose I do that to him too, you know, so I don't call him names and things, but, you know, I guess we kind of have small digs at each other. That's kind of not necessarily kind. But maybe kindness is the hardest thing to do in a relationship, because when you're in heats of moments, you just react. Number 6, you seek comfort in your relationship as opposed to outside of your relationship. I think that both of us don't seek comfort within our relationship, in the sense that he has his special interest that is definitely outside of me, and he goes to that special interest to seek his comfort, and I don't begrudge that. It is what it is. So because I don't have that comfort of emotional connection, I do seek it with my friends more than him. I will definitely get on the phone to a friend and talk for a couple of hours maybe, just to have, conversations, and have somebody understand where it is that I'm coming from and what I'm talking about and things like that. And yet he's the place that I fall back to, and same with him. We do at the end of the day sort of come together, sit on the couch together, watch some TV, and just spend that time with each other. So we have sort of kind of always been that soft place to fall with each other at the end of the day, even though there's been a lot of conflict. So I guess we kind of do have this one area that is working for us. Like, as I mentioned in another video, he's somebody that I can rely on to go out with. So if I want to go Christmas shopping, for example, which it is Christmas time this time of year, hence why I've missed a video, because Christmas, I can say to him, hey, let's go shopping. And I hate going shopping, so I would definitely take somebody with me if I go shopping, because I find it really stressful. And I like the fact that he will come with me. And he's actually quite good to take shopping. He's not one of those people that gets really annoyed because you're taking too long in a store. He's quite patient like that. He doesn't mind shopping, to be honest, and that's probably why. Or if I say, hey, do you want to go out and have a cuppa down the road? He will say yes. So we do have that sort of camaraderie that I don't necessarily have with other friends. And there's various reasons why. Like, I've got a good friend who lives more than an hour away, so it's a little bit hard to sort of tee up something like that without one of us going out of our way to be near the other. So in that sense, I suppose he's a good comrade, a good friend, a good comfort to a certain degree. Number 7, you can be independent. And obviously this would come down to things like coercive control and abuse and things like this. Like, is your partner stopping you from having a life? In that sense, we definitely have this in abundance. It's the one thing we do have in the relationship. He will let me just go off and do my thing. He has no issue whatsoever about that. In fact, he encourages it. The more time I'm away from him doing my own thing, the more time he's got to do his own thing. So, of course, he loves that concept. And I didn't really have a problem with him pursuing his special interests. I guess I just hadn't expected it to be so full on. So, as I've mentioned before, those first few years where we were together, and he just watched TV. Every waking spare minute he had was him watching TV. And it didn't bother me so much that he had this, enjoyment of watching TV. I just was boggled by how much TV he wanted to watch, and how neglectful he was of the relationship because of how much TV he wanted to watch. That threw me for a 6. I just was completely bamboozled by it. Unexpected 100%. And it didn't help that I was in a town away from my family and friends, and he was the only person I had to rely on. once we moved back to my town with my family and friends, I guess I needed less from him because I had other people to seek for comfort and support. And I've always been able to do my own activities like dance lessons and things like that. So he has never really stopped that. He's never begrudged, say, the cost of it. If a dance lesson's $20 a week or whatever, he doesn't mind. So in that sense, we do have that freedom. I could easily say I'm going to a friend's tonight, I'm going out on Friday, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and neither of us will mind. I don't mind if he's doing that either. So yeah, that's something that our relationship does have in abundance, is our ability to be independent. And as I mentioned in another video, I think that that's one of the reasons why we've done so well, is because I think that people on the spectrum need partners who are independent. I don't think that they could really do a partner who was super clingy and needed so much from them. I think that that would make things worse. And I think that's why my husband and I have done so well, because I'm fiercely independent, and he's never stopped me from being that. So, of that being said, I mean, my independence in the house is a whole nother ball game. If I want to erect a shed, for example, yeah, there'd be issues. I'm just picturing it. I mean, again though, we will buy like a shelf that you put together, you know, like something from IKEA, for example, and you've got to like flat pack it, that's it, that's what I'm looking for, and put it together. He will handball that to me because he finds those things stressful. So he will let me do something like that, no problem. But if I wanted to erect a shed in the backyard, he'd be there taking over and not wanting me to have that independence, because he would want to do it right and best and stuff like that. So there's kind of push and pull and give and take, areas where it works and areas where it doesn't, I guess. So they're the 7 signs of a good relationship. Feel free to comment below. Do you have these? Are some of them relatable to you? You don't have others? Let me know. And on a side note, I just wanted to quickly talk about a conversation that I'd had with my son recently. He's in his late teens. And we were talking about loneliness, because I had a conversation with a man who's on the spectrum, and he was saying he finds it hard to line up his desire to be left alone, because he doesn't necessarily like people or like being around them, but also he feels lonely. So how does he like remedy that? And so I asked my son if he feels lonely at times, because he's kind of like that. He doesn't really like a whole lot of human interaction. And he said that he does feel lonely, sort of in the sense of, say, finding a partner, which then led us to talk about that, and that was what the conversation was about. And I said to him, look, I don't want you to go into a relationship just because you feel that you have to, like it's a societal norm and you feel pressured to do it. You should definitely just be doing it because it's something that you want. However, it's going to be really hard, and I want to reiterate this to him, which is why I'm making these videos. Relationships are hard work. They are give and take. There are going to be areas where you really struggle. And I said to my son, it's not a matter of finding somebody who's perfect, or even necessarily somebody who's perfect for you. Some people are lucky and they have that. Others just sort of go with a partner who they can best tolerate. So, for example, let's say my husband was really messy and he gambled. And I could tolerate the mess, but I couldn't tolerate the gambling. If I said to him, will you stop gambling, and he did, then maybe this would be a relationship that works. So it's about finding that balance, that person who fits into your, I suppose what they call deal breakers. I would never have been able to stay with somebody who hit me, and yet I stayed with somebody who was a yeller, who verbally attacked, critiqued, fault-finded, which is verbal abuse. And I stayed with that for various different reasons, but I guess primarily because it was something that I guess I felt I could handle. And there were times where I thought I was going to go insane and I couldn't handle it. But out of all the deals that could be broken, that to me was, I guess, on the lower end of the spectrum of deals, of breakable deals. So I'm just trying to have conversations with my son about how relationships work. Did I mention that he's on the spectrum, my son, the one that I'm talking to with? Because I want him to understand when he goes into a relationship, it's not going to be all rainbows and sunshine and butterflies. There's going to be conflicts. He's going to have to learn how to resolve them. He's going to have to try not to lose his temper like his dad does. At the moment, he's not that kind of person. None of my children have temper issues. But I just like to have those conversations with him. And again, that's why I'm making these videos, because whether you're on the spectrum or not, relationships are complicated. There's all this give and take that needs to be done, and where do you draw the line, and what's good, what's bad, you know. That's why I made videos about how I don't like to yell and I don't like to name call. To me, they're things that I don't think that should ever be done in a relationship. And I know that people are doing that. I think name calling is probably one of the things people do the most. In friendships, relationships, parenting, I think it's just something, you know, I don't know what the stats are, but a lot of people do it. And so yeah, I like these videos to be sort of kind of educational, but a little bit of just learning, if you're on the spectrum, learning about what relationships are going to be like and deciding whether or not you actually want to be in them. Because a lot of people on the spectrum go into relationships because it's expected, get in there and realise this is way, way worse than they ever imagined, and they don't like it. So yeah, just putting that out there, having conversations with my son, and also some conversations with you guys. Anyway, that's it for this video today. Feel free to comment below, because I love to have conversations with you. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I really do appreciate it.